Hello, my name is Ken Small and I'm an architect in Las Vegas, Nevada. Over the many years that I've been practicing in the Las Vegas area and in other places, one question comes up over and over again, and that is, how do we know if our idea can be built without getting a lot of money into it? How can we get a good idea of what can be built on a property, or whether our idea will work, or what is the highest and best use for a piece of property? And if you haven't watched our preliminary design video, then I would suggest that you have a look at that video in addition to this one. But what I'm going to talk to you about in this one is what's the next step after you have a preliminary design. So as I talked about before in the prior video, it's probably not a good idea to go buy a piece of property in the Las Vegas area without doing a little bit more due diligence than maybe some other jurisdictions. And so there are a lot of rules of thumb going on in construction, in real estate. Real estate broker might tell you that for so many acres of property, then you can typically build so many square feet of office building or restaurant or whatever it is. Same may go for a general contractor who may tell you that. But I, as an architect, can tell you I've seen plenty of surprises, and rarely, if ever, on the upside. So there are lots of vacant pieces of property in the Las Vegas area that have sat vacant on the market for many, many years, and you may wonder, driving down the street, why those properties have not been sold. And the answer could be that, for example, one piece of property, a major intersection that we're aware of, is not allowed to have a driveway entering the property. Well, it makes it pretty much useless for anything. And another piece of property that a major retail client here in the valley had bought not too long ago, there was a 20-foot property easement in the front for a jogging path, and essentially building a public park across the front of the property was a cost that was borne by the property owner when he developed the property. And another one also found a similar situation where the back 20 feet of the property was not only lost to his use, but he was going to have to build essentially public parkland as part of a jogging trail to be able to utilize that property for anything at all. So these kinds of things would be good to know before you're signing on the dotted line to buy the property. On residential property, there can be things like flood areas and utility easements and the like that are also important to find out about. So what we suggest is that first we create a preliminary design, and so I'm just going to show you a couple here real quick. This is a beautiful color preliminary design that we did for a client. We did this sketch. He had a really good idea of exactly what it was he wanted to do. It had gone through a bunch of process with different critiques and others that were involved before we were, and so he wanted something that amounted to really a little bit of eye candy to show people who were living there what wonderful thing they were going to do. And then we took this down to the city of Las Vegas to find out what their issues were with it. Here's another one. This is a more common. This is a Xerox copy of a hand sketch that was done with a pencil and felt tip, and it's for a retail shopping center. And these sketches were then taken to the jurisdiction to show them what it was that our client wanted. And I'm just going to show you one more. I think this was in Henderson for a very small um, house, three-family house that was anticipated also in the Henderson area. And so we take this information down to planning and zoning, and we have a very informal discussion with them about what do they think. Now, if you're familiar with how the regulations work in all the jurisdictions, each one's just a little bit different, but in essence what they want you to do is to file it for a process and then go through a process that can be quite time consuming. And so we usually recommend this step before that one, because that step can necessitate the drawing of a lot more information, which of course costs a lot more money to produce. It can involve civil engineering and landscaping design and so on. And honestly, if you're bringing a three-story building sketch down and you show it to planning and zoning and they say you can only build a one-story building here, then why bother going on to where is the landscaping? It doesn't matter. This property is not suitable for that use. Cut your losses and move on. Now, when we bring these down there, you get some different options. You can go down there with no sketch at all and ask them a few questions, but generally speaking, people always want to cooperate, and they're optimistic. And so without a specific sketch to look at, if you just say, hey, I want to do a 10,000 square foot office building or a 4,000, 6,000, 8,000 square foot house or whatever it is, then they're almost always going to tell you yes. But when you do the sketch and you realize that the only way you can get that size of office building onto that size of site is to make it a three-story, and then you show them a drawing that says three-story building, then you may get a different answer. You may or may not. Now, this isn't going to find you all the information that could possibly be found on the site, but another thing that we've discovered in bringing a concrete request to the planning and zoning departments of the various jurisdictions, and that's unincorporated Clark County, Henderson, North Las Vegas, there are others, and asking the specific question is that it really gives the planner an opportunity to think his way through what are the ramifications of this, and there might and often are bits of information that are very, very significant that they have access to that are not readily available to the general public. Now, what do I mean by that? Are they keeping secrets down there? Not really, but if there are past zoning cases that this site is involved in, the ramifications of those past zoning cases can be a little bit tough to try to figure out exactly what it is they mean and where they go. And so I've personally had the experience of going down to the county and them telling me or one of my staff that there's a zoning case and it's posted online after looking at the sketch, and then us going back and looking online and it's not there. The planner who we talked to and probably everybody down there thought that that piece of information was available to the general public, but until we went down there and showed them the sketch and then said, I don't see this online, they didn't have the information out there for us to look at. And what was the information in that case? Exactly what I mentioned earlier, only allowing to build a one-story building on a lot. Now, if you were the person who bought this lot and needed a 2 or 3 story building, you would be pretty unhappy. So this preliminary design process, it does cost in the low thousands of dollars, let us say $2,000 and up, is a good safeguard just to find some of the obstacles that could be there. Now, what it doesn't do is it doesn't find out a lot of things that take more effort to find out. It's just a first blush look at the situation to see if it's even going to work at all. And a lot of cases, the reason why a lot is vacant and it seems like a good deal is exactly those kind of problems. So you uncover it right away. The people who are selling the lot want too much money for it because everybody thinks that it's usable as a 3-story, but a prior zoning case made it into a 1-story. So you have 2 lots sitting side by side, both for the same price. If you bought one and not the other, you might have bought the wrong one if one was restricted and the other one wasn't. More than likely both have restrictions, but one could be restricted to a 1-story and another restricted to a 2-story, and maybe one more lot up the block restricted to a 3, and then all the others up the block restricted to a 3-story. And if they're all selling for the same price, of course, you know which one you want. If you only want a 1-story building, then you're going to go back and tell the seller, hey, I want the lot that's limited to 1 story. It's worth less, so I'm now offering you less, and see if you can haggle a deal somehow with that. So after you've gone through this process, then there's going to be a larger process, which is the official preliminary submission, and where all it leads. And that process typically will take more than a month to go through. But this process here typically gets done in a week. We usually draw the analogy of, if you walk into a restaurant and you say, how much does it cost me to do this, or how much is a meal, and you can't answer what meal you want, then they can't tell you how much it cost. If you go through this preliminary design process, when you get to the other side, you can say the equivalent of, hey, I want meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and then we can tell you what it cost for meatloaf and mashed potatoes. And you're going to go into every step in the process of the development in the same way, built upon the prior step. So if the prior step doesn't exist, it's hard to give a sharp pencil price for the first official government step. Not that we can't do it, not that we don't do it that way all the time, but just talking about, if you want to do yourself a favor and conserve your financial expenditures, and you don't want to take the risk of making a mistake, which this doesn't absolutely preclude making a mistake, but it eliminates some possibilities of making a major mistake, then go through this step in the process and see what the outcome is, and then you can decide if you want to move on. Thanks a lot for watching this video. My name is Ken Small, and I'm an architect in Las Vegas, Nevada. Always, if you're a commercial customer, our initial consultation in our office is free. There's not a reason why you shouldn't come over and take advantage of that. You can talk to me personally or one of my staff members about what your ideas are and what you're thinking, and you won't have to spend a nickel, and we know a lot more than what we can put into these little videos. So I would suggest coming over and having a consultation with us and seeing if we can help you make the right choices. Our office number is 702-873-1718. And again, my name is Ken Small. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.